In 235 AD, the Roman Emperor Alexander Severus was in his military camp on the Rhine frontier. He was 26 years old. He had ruled for 13 years. His soldiers surrounded him. They were angry. The emperor had tried to negotiate peace with Germanic tribes instead of fighting them. The soldiers wanted war and plunder. The soldiers attacked. They murdered Alexander Severus and his mother. Then they proclaimed their own choice as emperor. A tough soldier named Maximinus Thrax. This might seem like just another imperial assassination. Rome had seen emperors murdered before. But this event marked the beginning of something much worse. Over the next 50 years, Rome would have more than 50 men claim to be emperor. Most would die violently. Armies would fight armies. Provinces would break away. The borders would collapse under invasion. The empire nearly died. This period is called the crisis of the 3rd century. And it shows us how even the mightiest empire can come to the brink of destruction. Let me take you back to where the crisis really began. With an emperor named Commodus. When Marcus Aurelius died in 180 AD, his son Commodus became emperor. Commodus was 19 years old. And he was everything his father was not. Marcus Aurelius had been wise, philosophical, dutiful. He spent years on the frontier fighting Rome's enemies, because that was his duty. Commodus was vain, cruel, and lazy. He had no interest in governing. He wanted pleasure and entertainment. Commodus believed he was the reincarnation of Hercules. He dressed in a lion's skin. He fought in the arena as a gladiator, which was scandalous. Gladiators were slaves and criminals. An emperor fighting like a slave was disgraceful. But Commodus forced senators to attend his performances. He made them cheer for him. Anyone who displeased him might be executed. Commodus left the actual governing to others. Various advisors and favorites ran the empire. Corruption flourished. The government became chaotic. After 13 years of misrule, a conspiracy formed. In 192 AD, Commodus was strangled in his bath by an assassin. The golden age of the 5 good emperors was over. What followed was chaos. 5 different men claimed the throne in quick succession. This period is called the Year of the 5 Emperors. Eventually, a general named Septimius Severus emerged victorious. Severus was from North Africa. He was tough and capable. He restored order. But Severus also did something that would have long-term consequences. He dramatically increased the army's pay. He gave soldiers bonuses and gifts. He made it clear that the army's loyalty was what mattered most. On his deathbed in 211 AD, Severus gave his sons advice. He told them to enrich the soldiers and ignore everyone else. This created a problem. The emperor's power now clearly depended on the army's support. And the army knew it. Soldiers realized they could make and unmake emperors. If soldiers didn't like their emperor, they could kill him and choose a new one. And the new emperor would reward them for their support. This started a terrible cycle. Severus's sons, Caracalla and Geta, fought each other for power. Caracalla murdered his brother Geta, along with thousands of Geta's supporters. Caracalla ruled through fear and violence. Caracalla did do one significant thing. In 212 AD, he granted Roman citizenship to almost all free inhabitants of the empire. This was a huge expansion of citizenship. But Caracalla probably did this to increase tax revenue. Citizens paid certain taxes that non-citizens didn't. More citizens meant more tax money to pay the soldiers. In 217 AD, Caracalla was assassinated by one of his own soldiers while urinating on the side of the road. That's how the great-grandson of Marcus Aurelius died. After Caracalla came a series of emperors from the Severan family. They were increasingly weak and controlled by powerful women and military strongmen. The last Severan emperor was Alexander Severus, whose murder in 235 AD started the real crisis. What followed was 50 years of almost continuous chaos. Historians call it the crisis of the 3rd century. Let me explain what happened. The empire faced multiple disasters all at the same time. First, there was the problem of imperial succession. Between 235 and 284 AD, there were at least 50 men who claimed to be emperor. Some ruled for years. Some ruled for months. Some ruled for just weeks or days. Most died violently, murdered by their own soldiers, killed in battle against rival emperors, assassinated by conspirators. The army divided into factions. Different legions supported different candidates. Civil wars erupted constantly. Roman armies fought each other, while foreign enemies invaded. Second, the frontiers collapsed. Rome's enemies saw the empire's weakness and attacked. In the north, Germanic tribes poured across the Rhine and Danube rivers. The Goths, the Alemanni, the Franks. They raided deep into Roman territory. They sacked cities. They carried off plunder and captives. In 251 AD, the Emperor Decius was killed fighting the Goths. An entire Roman army was destroyed. This was the first time a Roman emperor had been killed in battle against barbarians in centuries. The invasions continued. In 260 AD, Germanic tribes reached northern Italy. Rome itself was threatened for the first time in centuries. Third, the eastern frontier collapsed. Rome's old rival Parthia had been replaced by a new, more aggressive power. The Sassanid Persian Empire. The Sassanids were powerful and well organized. They wanted to reclaim territories that had once belonged to the old Persian Empire centuries before. In the 240s and 250s, the Sassanids invaded Roman territory repeatedly. They captured cities in Syria and Mesopotamia. Then, in 260 AD, something unthinkable happened. The Roman Emperor Valerian was campaigning against the Persians. In a battle near Edessa, the Roman army was defeated, and Emperor Valerian was captured alive. This had never happened before. A Roman emperor captured by a foreign enemy. The Persian king Shapur humiliated Valerian. According to some accounts, he used Valerian as a footstool to mount his horse. When Valerian died in captivity, Shapur supposedly had his skin stuffed and displayed as a trophy. Whether these stories are true or exaggerated, the message was clear. Rome's invincibility was shattered. Even the emperor could be defeated and humiliated. Fourth, the empire began to fragment. Provinces broke away under local leaders. In the west, a Roman general named Postumus declared himself emperor of Gaul, Britain, and Spain. This breakaway state is called the Gallic Empire. It lasted from 260 to 274 AD. Postumus didn't try to march on Rome. He just wanted to defend his territories from Germanic invasions. He created his own government, minted his own coins, and ruled independently. In the east, the city of Palmyra in Syria became a power. Queen Zenobia of Palmyra conquered Egypt and much of the eastern provinces. She ruled an independent Palmyrene empire from 267 to 272 AD. At one point around 270 AD, the recognized Roman emperor controlled only Italy and parts of the Balkans. The rest of the empire was split into rival states. Fifth, the economy collapsed. The constant civil wars and invasions devastated the empire economically. Trade routes were disrupted. Cities were sacked. Fields were abandoned as farmers fled invasions. The government was desperate for money to pay the armies. But tax collection was difficult during chaos. Provinces that had broken away weren't paying taxes at all. So emperors debased the currency. They reduced the amount of silver in coins. A coin that was once mostly silver became mostly copper with just a thin coating of silver. This created massive inflation. Prices skyrocketed. A loaf of bread that cost 1 coin at the beginning of the century cost hundreds of coins by the end. When money becomes worthless, economies break down. People stopped using coins. They went back to barter, trading goods directly. The sophisticated Roman economy regressed. Sixth, plague struck. In the 250s and 260s, a terrible epidemic swept through the empire. It's called the Plague of Cyprian after a bishop who described it. We don't know exactly what disease it was, possibly measles or smallpox, but it killed huge numbers of people. Thousands died daily in Rome at the plague's peak. Cities were depopulated. Farms were abandoned. The army couldn't recruit enough soldiers. Some historians estimate that the plague killed up to 1/5 of the empire's population. That's 10 million people or more. The demographic catastrophe weakened the empire terribly. 7. Climate change made things worse. The 3rd century was a time of climate instability. There were droughts and floods. Harvests failed. Food became scarce. This contributed to economic problems and made it harder for the empire to feed its cities and armies. By 270 AD, the Roman Empire seemed to be dying. The center couldn't hold. Barbarians were conquering Roman territory. The economy had collapsed. The government was bankrupt. Different regions had broken away. Historians debate whether Rome almost fell during this period, or whether the empire was resilient enough to survive. But certainly, it was the worst crisis Rome had faced in centuries. Then came a series of strong military emperors who fought to save the empire. The first was Aurelian, who became emperor in 270 AD. Aurelian was a tough soldier from the Balkans. He was called Restitutor Orbis, restorer of the world. Aurelian defeated the Goths, who had invaded the Balkans. He abandoned the province of Dacia because it was too exposed to invasion. This was the first time Rome had voluntarily given up territory. Then Aurelian marched east and defeated Queen Zenobia of Palmyra. He captured her and destroyed Palmyra's power. The eastern provinces were reclaimed. Next, Aurelian marched west and defeated the Gallic Empire. He brought Gaul, Britain, and Spain back under central control. By 274 AD, Aurelian had reunited the empire. It was an extraordinary achievement. Aurelian also built new walls around Rome. These massive walls still stand today. They were 40 feet high in places and enclosed the entire city. The fact that Rome needed walls again showed how dangerous the world had become. But in 275 AD, Aurelian was assassinated by his own officers over a misunderstanding. The empire lost a capable leader just when it needed him most. After Aurelian came several short-lived emperors. Then, in 284 AD, a general named Diocletian became emperor. Diocletian realized that one man couldn't effectively rule and defend the entire empire. It was too large. Crises happened simultaneously in different regions. An emperor in Italy couldn't respond quickly to an invasion in Syria or Britain. So Diocletian came up with a radical solution. Divide the empire and share power. In 286 AD, Diocletian appointed a co-emperor named Maximian. Diocletian ruled the eastern half of the empire. Maximian ruled the western half. Both were equal emperors with the title Augustus. Then in 293 AD, Diocletian went further. Each Augustus appointed a junior emperor called a Caesar. The Caesars would help govern and lead armies. They would also be designated successors. This system is called the Tetrarchy, ruled by 4 men ruling the empire together. The empire was divided into 4 administrative regions. Each emperor had his own capital and armies. Diocletian ruled from Nicomedia in the east. Maximian ruled from Milan in Italy. The 2 Caesars ruled from other cities. Rome was no longer the capital. It had become just a ceremonial center. Real government happened elsewhere. This system had advantages. Military threats could be addressed quickly. Each region had an emperor nearby who could respond. The burden of ruling was shared. but it depended on cooperation. The four rulers had to work together and respect the arrangement. Diocletian also reformed the army. He increased its size significantly. He separated the mobile field armies from the frontier garrisons. This allowed for flexible response to invasions. He reformed the administration. He divided provinces into smaller units for better control. He created a massive bureaucracy with officials at every level. He reformed taxation. He instituted a new tax system based on regular assessments of land and population. Taxes were predictable and could be collected more efficiently. He tried to reform the economy. In 301 AD, he issued the Edict on Maximum Prices, which set price controls on hundreds of goods and services. This was an attempt to stop inflation. The price controls didn't work. People just traded on the black market. But the edict shows how desperately the government wanted to stabilize the economy. Diocletian also persecuted Christians. He saw Christianity as a threat to Roman unity. In 303 AD, he launched the Great Persecution. Christian churches were destroyed. Christian scriptures were burned. Christians who refused to sacrifice to Roman gods were executed. This persecution was severe in the eastern provinces where Diocletian ruled. It was less severe in the west where Maximian was more tolerant. Thousands of Christians died, but Christianity continued to grow. In 305 AD, Diocletian did something extraordinary. He voluntarily retired. He abdicated and forced Maximian to abdicate as well. The two Caesars became the new Augusti and appointed new Caesars. Diocletian retired to a palace he had built in what is now split Croatia. He spent his final years gardening. When asked to return to power during later troubles, he reportedly said he would rather tend his cabbages. The tetrarchy lasted about 20 years. But after Diocletian retired, the system broke down. The various emperors and Caesars began fighting each other. Another civil war erupted. Multiple men claimed imperial power. In 306 AD alone, there were 6 different people claiming to be emperor. Out of this chaos emerged Constantine. Constantine was the son of one of Diocletian's Caesars. He was proclaimed emperor by his father's soldiers in Britain in 306 AD. But Constantine had to fight to win control. It took him nearly 20 years and several civil wars. The decisive moment came in 312 AD. Constantine was marching on Rome to fight his rival Maxentius. Before the battle at the Milvian Bridge, just outside Rome, Constantine reportedly had a vision. According to Christian accounts, Constantine saw a cross of light in the sky with the words, "In this sign conquer." That night, he dreamed that Christ told him to mark his soldiers' shields with a Christian symbol. Constantine did so. In the battle, Constantine won decisively. Maxentius drowned in the Tiber River while fleeing. Constantine attributed his victory to the Christian God. He began to favor Christianity openly. In 313 AD, Constantine and his co-emperor Licinius issued the Edict of Milan. This granted religious tolerance throughout the empire. Christians could worship freely. Their property would be returned. This was revolutionary. For the first time, Christianity was legal and protected. Constantine went further. He favored Christianity actively. He exempted Christian clergy from taxes. He gave the church money and land. He built magnificent churches, including Old St. Peter's Basilica in Rome. Constantine himself gradually converted to Christianity, though he wasn't baptized until his deathbed in 337 AD. In 325 AD, Constantine called the Council of Nicaea. This was a gathering of bishops from across the empire. Its purpose was to resolve theological disputes, particularly about the nature of Christ. The council produced the Nicene Creed, which defined Orthodox Christian belief. Constantine used Christianity to unify the empire ideologically. But Constantine did more than promote Christianity. He also founded a new capital. In 330 AD, Constantine inaugurated a new city on the site of the ancient Greek town of Byzantium. He called it Constantinople, the city of Constantine. Today it's Istanbul. Constantinople was strategically located. It sat on the Bosporus Strait, controlling the passage between Europe and Asia. It was near the wealthy eastern provinces. It was defensible, surrounded by water on three sides. Constantine built Constantinople as a Christian capital. It had churches, not pagan temples. It was the new Rome, but better positioned and more Christian than the old Rome. The founding of Constantinople symbolized how the empire was changing. The center of power was shifting east. Christianity was replacing paganism. The Roman Empire was transforming into something new. Constantine reunited the empire under his sole rule. When he died in 337 AD, he divided it among his three sons. They immediately began fighting each other. More civil wars. Eventually, the empire was briefly reunited under Constantine's nephew Julian, known as Julian the Apostate because he rejected Christianity and tried to restore paganism. But Julian died fighting the Persians in 363 AD. His pagan revival died with him. After Julian came a series of Christian emperors. Christianity was now the dominant religion of the empire. In 380 AD, Emperor Theodosius made Christianity the official state religion. Pagan worship was banned. The Roman Empire, which had persecuted Christians for centuries, was now a Christian empire that persecuted pagans. But the empire was increasingly divided. After Theodosius died in 395 AD, the empire was permanently split between his two sons. Arcadius got the east. Honorius got the west. In theory, this was still one empire with two administrations. In practice, east and west were becoming separate. The eastern half, with its capital at Constantinople, was wealthy. It had prosperous cities, effective administration, and defensible borders. The east would survive and prosper. The western half, with its capital now at Ravenna in northern Italy, was struggling. It had a weaker economy, less defensible borders, and constant barbarian pressure. The west was in trouble. And the barbarians were coming. Not just raiding anymore. Entire tribes were migrating into the empire, fleeing enemies to their east. In 376 AD, Gothic refugees appeared at the Danube border. They were fleeing the Huns, terrifying nomadic warriors from Central Asia. The Goths begged to enter the empire. Rome let them in. Tens of thousands of Gothic refugees crossed the Danube. But Roman officials exploited and abused them. They were cheated and starved. The Goths rebelled. In 378 AD, at the Battle of Adrianople, Gothic cavalry destroyed a Roman army. The Emperor Valens was killed. It was Rome's worst military defeat since Cannae's 600 years earlier. After Adrianople, Rome could no longer defeat large barbarian groups in the field. Instead, Rome tried to manage them. Settle them in the empire. Use them as soldiers. Hire them as mercenaries. But this created a new problem. The army was becoming barbarian. Germanic soldiers filled the legions. Germanic generals commanded Roman armies. These soldiers and generals were technically Roman. They served Rome. But their loyalty was uncertain. And they often fought to advance their own interests. The empire was militarily dependent on the very people who threatened it. Romans no longer defended Rome. Barbarians defended Rome from other barbarians. By 400 AD, the Western Empire was a hollow shell. The economy was in ruins. Cities were shrinking. The government was weak. The army was barbarian.